Hi and welcome to Thete Gaming and another Dragonflight Alpha video where I'm going to be discussing my general thoughts on the talent tree. So I discussed yesterday my initial reaction to the Retribution Paladin talent tree, but I've been looking at the Evoker one as well, and I will be looking at some other classes over the next week. And I have some general thoughts. I frankly think there's good, bad and ugly to this, and I shall go through them in order. I will say that instinctively I'm not a fan of this system, but there are good features. So those who do like this system, what is it they like about it? Well, the first is, like in the old days, it allows you from level 10, if you're leveling up level 10, you get a talent point, you can spend it on an ability, and every level you get a talent point. And and I've said this over at the time, that when they changed to the Mists of Pandaria talent system, one thing they lost was that feeling of getting something when you got a level. So I can absolutely accept that this is a benefit of it. It means as you're leveling up, you're going every level, you get something. It's not just, oh, another level, another level ticked off before you can actually start to play the game. Because World of Warcraft for quite a long time has had a bit of an issue that not all MMOs have. I think some of the other MMOs that I play casually don't have this issue, in that you sort of feel your leveling is an advanced tutorial, but you don't play the game until you've got to the level cap. So having something that allows you to customize your character as you level up is absolutely a benefit of a system like this. The other thing is this specific system is seen as a replacement for what has been termed borrowed power systems. That you develop the powers of your character through an expansion. After you've hit level cap, you're building up your powers. We've been doing this really since Legion, last few expansions, and then at the end of the expansion you lose them. Maybe one of them appears. So for example, for Paladin, we got Wake of Ashes in Legion. Well, we had the option of retaining it for the following one. In Shadowlands Divine Toll, we have the option of retaining it. But generally speaking, all these abilities that you've spent time in the expansion getting for your character are all just blown away. There's obviously some storyline reason for it, but it nonetheless represents players developing their character and then being told to hand back all the shiny things. Now, if this is, as Ian Hazakostas says, a replacement for that system, if in Dragonflight we're not going to be doing that instead this is our ability system, then that is also another benefit. So there are two, at least, clear benefits that I will accept. But there's bad as well. There's just as many players that don't like the borrowed power concept. I don't think they're going to be happy with losing core abilities that their character has had since vanilla WoW. The paladins, all these things. You can still get a lot of them with the talents, but you can't get all of them, is the key point. So there are abilities in here that we've had since at least 2005, if not 2004, that is now you're not going to automatically have, and you won't be able to get all of them. You will have to choose. And it's like, some players of a class for 18 years have had this ability, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm not going to be able to have it now. And I think some of the placement is very odd as well. I've been mostly focusing on the talent tree, as I say, for Evoker and Paladin so far, most especially Paladin. But you sometimes have a branch of a tree that is clearly aimed at a particular playstyle. Then you have a strong ability for that playstyle in a completely different branch which serves no purpose at all. So for example, on the Ret tree, the right hand side is largely single target, the left hand side is more AoE, and yet you have an ability here which is purely single target, zero value in AoE. You're not going to get any benefit from it in AoE. Why isn't it over here? Over here somewhere, I always forget where. Oh, there it is. That's an AoE ability. Why don't they swap? Now things like that might get sorted out as part of the feedback process. This is a decision that's not set in stone. It could be that all of these things get resolved by the time the game goes live. But the fact that you even have these things at this point meant that some developers thought that it was fine. And they may insist that it's fine. Oh, well, you've got to make your choices. Like, no, your choices are, do I go single target or AoE or whichever bits of utility? It shouldn't be. If I'm going to go single target, I should be able to go single target. Then there are also some valuable utility abilities that can only be accessed by spending points on literally useless abilities. And I don't think it should ever be necessary to spend a single talent point on a literally useless ability. Where I think branches work is if you've got something like a chain, so there's an ability here, you go down here to get an ability to buff it. So I would say if you're, there's some odd placements here. So there's an ability here, for example. Now you go down here, and this isn't related to it, but the sort of person that would take that ability is likely to take that ability as well. So that's fine. But they're not necessarily likely to take that ability. And yet you can't just stop there, because the next one down, and you have to follow this entire chain, reduces the cooldown of this ability. So of course, if you want that ability, you want to reduce its cooldown as well. It's a significant cooldown, a third off the time. But you have to go through what may be a user. It's certainly not a talent that is part of this chain. It doesn't fit. And there's other ones as well. So I've talked about on the rep specific one, but this is a general point. There'll be other class trees that have similar situations. There's an ability here, very valuable, very valuable. But you've got to go through a whole chain of abilities that, for the role of a retribution paladin in this particular case, are useless, or at least of very, very low value. So it's either these are very suboptimal, this one is okay, this one is niche, so it may be useless or it may not. This is definitely useless. So to get it, you've got to spend point on a useless talent, something that's probably a useless talent, useful, fine, then very suboptimal before you can get it. Now, to my mind, if you've got a very valuable utility, it should be in amongst other valuable abilities, or it should be much closer to the top, so that if you have to I'm okay with the concept of spending one or two suboptimal talent points to get something very good. That's fine. That's always been the case with these sort of talent trees. I am much less fine with the idea of spending even a single talent point on a literally useless ability. And I am completely against having to spend several talent points on either useless or suboptimal abilities to get one decent ability. So that, so I do think there are bad features. The first one, actually in both cases, I suppose, they could be fixed. My feedback when I'm allowed to post it on the forums will be along placement. I think the bad features of the talent system really are to do with placement, and those could be sorted. They could be fixed, and then I wouldn't have an issue. But then there's the ugly. The ugly is proper ugly to the bone. It's a necessary part of this system, and it's not changing for Dragonflight launch. This is not actually like the talent trees of the ancient MMOs of legend. There you made your choice and that was it. It was all fairly hardcore compared to modern MMOs. You could change it, you could change your mind for a price, but it was often expensive and always inconvenient. You did not do this in the field. This talent system is intended to be very different. You are encouraged to create a lot of profiles. I've only created a few so far. I don't actually know if there's a cap on these profiles. I can imagine you having quite a few if there's not, or if it's a very large cap. So you're going to create lots of profiles to tailor your strength to certain situations. Now, this could well mean a lot of subtly different profiles for not just raids, dungeons and PvP, but individual profiles for each raid boss or each dungeon or every style of PvP. And I don't know how easily you're going to be able to change them in dungeons. I hope not at all, because we could end up with the very messy situation of changing profiles, not just for a dungeon, but between bosses and trash in mythic dungeons. Hopefully that's not going to be a thing, because that's horrendous. But, you know, you could in theory have that situation. But at the very least, even if you can't change it inside a mythic dungeon, I hope you can, you're still going to have a situation where you go, okay, well, this dungeon, most of the crucial elements are along dealing with those particularly nasty trash packs quite quickly and easily. So you take crowd control and AoE. Or you say, well, this dungeon, the really tough bits are those bosses that are incredibly nasty and you can easily wipe on. So you take your full-on single target DPS and maybe defensive abilities, you know, damage reductions and so on. Although that's a sore point with a paladin at the moment. So you're going to have a lot of profiles, and then consider how you're going to decide on these profiles, right? So you're already looking at, it's going to take you a while to set these profiles up, okay? How are you going to decide on them? You've got two options. You can get busy with the sims, and that's what you're realistically going to want to do. Get busy with the simming. That's going to take you a while. The second thing is you do what most people do, and you go and ask someone on a forum, which talent set should I use for this dungeon or this raid boss or whatever? And the thing is, they're not going to like the answer. They're not going to like the answer. Because, I will mention, for players who are not trying to squeeze out the last couple of percent points from the performers, you don't actually need all these profiles. All these profiles are really going to be for the more serious players, whether chasing high keys in Mythic Plus, doing Mythic raids, or high-end PvP. Most players are not going to need all these profiles. That being said, even very suboptimal players still want to maximize their benefit from talent, because that's an easy thing to get someone else to advise you on, and then you've just done it. So people always want to know what is the optimal talent set for them. The problem is that they're not going to like the answer, because it won't be, they'll be going on the forum thinking, okay, so for this particular, say, raid boss, which talent set should I go for? And they'll be expecting someone to link them an image, go, do this. That's, if they're going to get a good response, that's not going to be the response they're going to get. The response they're going to be getting is, well, it depends. It depends on what trinket you have. It depends on how well your UI is set up, because some of these abilities, as will be the case for other classes as well, are very strong, but very difficult to use. Bit of a skill cap. So if you are a player who doesn't use add-ons like weakors or something like that to inform you about how long you've got left on certain things or something like that, some of the talents actually won't be all that useful for you, even though they will be, in theory, the strongest one. Because if you're not going to use them correctly, all of a sudden they're not the strongest one. And as I say, even if you are a good player, it can still depend on your specific role. Like, there might be a difference for a raid boss between, are you going to be able to sit on the boss, or are you going to have to go on ad duty? You know, do you have different trinkets that can change things around, or other bits of gear that have really interesting interactions that can change it as well? Very, very ugly. Very, very ugly. So that people's going to go away from that forum thinking, oh, Christ, I've got to do about 20 profiles and I'm on my own doing all the sims on it. Oh, my giddy aunt. Very, very ugly. And this is why, on balance, although I accept those good points, I accept that, you know, you can absolutely make a case for the benefits of the system, I just think the ugliness which the bad things can be changed. I have little faith they will be. Some might be, but they can be changed. The ugly things are an inherent part of the process. And I just think it's going to be a ball ache for a lot of players. But those are my general thoughts on the talent trees in general. We will see how they develop. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you later.